Today we'll be working in my workbook called Exodus from Egypt, which is on Exodus chapters 1 through 12. Looking at the table of contents, we have already completed the first 6 chapters of this book. We go from before Moses was born, setting up the situation where instead of the Israelites treated well, they are now slaves in Egypt. And then we see Moses being born and raised first as a Hebrew for about 2 months. Then he's put in the Nile. Pharaoh's daughter picks him up. And after 2 years of weaning with Jochebed, he then is raised in the palace of the Pharaoh. And at the age of 40, he sees how his Hebrew family and friends are treated, kills an Egyptian, and then has to escape to Midian to prevent being killed by the Pharaoh himself. So then he's in Midian for the second 40 years of his life. And he meets his wife there, Zipporah, and he has 2 children, Gershom and Eleazar. Then when he's tending sheep on Mount Horeb or Mount Sinai, same mountain, he sees a burning bush, and that's where he talks to God, and God convinces him that he is called, he is the man for the job to take the Israelites out of Egypt. Moses then goes back to the priest of Midian, his father, picks up Zipporah and his 2 sons, and they travel to the land of Goshen. He meets Aaron on the way, and then they speak to the elders. Then it starts where Moses and Aaron takes God's demand to Pharaoh about let my people go, in this case, to have a sacrifice or feast in 3 days' journey. Pharaoh, of course, doesn't like it, so he makes the jobs and tasks all that much harder for the people, which causes kind of a problem with the Israelites. But Moses reaffirms with God that he's done the right thing. So now we get to chapter 7. Chapter 7, the first 4 plagues, and this goes from Exodus 7:1 to 8:32. Exodus 7:1. So the Lord said to Moses, see, I have made you as God to Pharaoh, and Aaron your brother shall be your prophet. You shall speak all that I command you, and Aaron your brother shall tell Pharaoh to send the children of Israel out of his land. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply my signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt. But Pharaoh will not heed you, so I may lay my hand on Egypt and bring my armies and my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great judgments. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I stretch out my hand on Egypt and bring out the children of Israel from among them. Then Moses and Aaron did so, just as the Lord commanded them, so they did. Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83 years old when they spoke to Pharaoh. Okay? Of Aaron and Moses, who will be like God to Pharaoh? Moses. Of Aaron and Moses, who will be like a prophet? Aaron. What will God do to Pharaoh's heart? He will harden it. The reason why he's hardening it is he is now going to punish all of Egypt, and he has to do that in order to, and he has to harden Pharaoh's heart to do that. Notice this means that Pharaoh will no longer be able to change his mind. Why would God do this? Because the pharaohs of Egypt had been cruel for so long against the Israelites, it was time for their punishment. So number 4 is complete the sentence. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand on Egypt and bring out the children of Israel from among them. So based on 4, why is all these things going to happen to Egypt? So that the children of Israel, which are vast, leave Egypt. How old is Moses and how old is Aaron? Moses is 80 and Aaron is 83. So we know they're 3 years apart. Okay. Scriptures continue. Exodus 7:8. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, when Pharaoh speaks to you, saying, show a miracle for yourselves, then you shall say to Aaron, take your rod and cast it before Pharaoh and let it become a serpent. So Moses and Aaron went into the Pharaoh, and they did so, just as the Lord commanded. And Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. Who did God speak to? God spoke to Moses and Aaron. No, this is the first time that God spoke to both Moses and Aaron. Who's going to cast the rod before Pharaoh? Aaron. What will the rod become? A snake. Whose staff was it that first became a serpent? Moses' staff. What does Pharaoh have to say before Aaron throws his rod? Show me a miracle. When this happened, who else was there with Pharaoh? His servants. Exodus 7:11. But Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers, so the magicians of Egypt, they also did in like manner with their enchantments. For every man threw down his rod, and they became serpents. But Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods, and Pharaoh's heart grew hard. He did not heed them as the Lord had said. Who did Pharaoh call? The wise men and sorcerers of the kingdom. Were they able to also turn their rods into serpents? Yes, they were. What did Aaron's rod or serpent do to the other rods or serpents? He ate them up. Because his magicians were able to do the same thing, what was the reaction by Pharaoh? His heart grew hard and he did not heed Moses and Aaron. How were the magicians able to do this miracle? I don't know, but maybe sleight of hand or whatever. We don't know for sure. Did God know this was going to happen? Absolutely. Scriptures continue. Exodus 7:14. So the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hard. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning when he goes out to the water, and you shall stand by the river's bank to meet him. And the rod which was turned into a serpent you shall take in your hand. And you shall say to him, the Lord God of Hebrews has sent me to you, saying, let my people go that they may serve me in the wilderness. But indeed, until now you would not hear. Thus says the Lord, by this you shall know that I am the Lord. Behold, I will strike the waters which are in the river with a rod that is in my hand, and they shall be turned into blood. And the fish that are in the river shall die. The river shall stink, and the Egyptians will loathe to drink the water of the river. What time of day does Pharaoh go out to the Nile River? In the morning. What is in Moses' hand? His staff. What action will Moses take to change the water into blood? Let's see. He will strike the waters. What will happen to the fish of the river? They will die. What will happen to the smell of the river? It will stink. Will the Egyptians drink the water of the river? Of course not, after it's turned into blood. So the scriptures continue. Exodus 7:19. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, say to Aaron, take your rod and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over their streams, over their rivers, over their ponds, and over all the pools of water, that they may become blood. And there shall be blood throughout all the land of Egypt, both in buckets of wood and pitchers of stone. And Moses and Aaron did so, just as the Lord commanded. So he lifted up the rod and struck the waters that were in the river in the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants. And all the waters that were in the river were turned to blood. The fish that were in the river died, the river stank, and the Egyptians could not drink the water of the river. So there was blood throughout all the land of Egypt. Now, how is Aaron going to make the rest of the waters in Egypt turn to blood? Take the rod and stretch out your hands over the waters of Egypt. The water turning to blood would include that in the buckets of wood and the pitchers of stone. The first miracle was turning a rod into a snake. The second miracle, and therefore the first plague, actually the rod turning the snake wasn't a plague. The first plague is the river turning into blood. There will be a total of 10 plagues, but 11 miracles. Turning the staff into snake is not a plague upon Egypt, just a miracle. So far, did Moses know what miracles God was going to use? Yes, he's seen these two before. The miracle at the burning bush of leprosy is never used in front of Pharaoh. It's an interesting concept. It's actually never used. The Egyptians had many gods. Each of the 10 plagues removes all doubt that the God of the Israelites is greater than each of the gods of the Egyptians. In the case of the first plague, Hapi was the Egyptian god of the Nile River, and turning it into blood means that you have control over the waters more so than this god Napi. Happy. The scriptures continue. Then the magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments, and Pharaoh's heart grew hard. He did not heed them as the Lord had said. And Pharaoh turned and went into his house. Neither was his heart moved by this. So all the Egyptians dug around the river for water to drink, because they could not drink the water of the river. And 7 days passed after the Lord had struck the river. Were the magicians of Egypt able to change water into blood? Yes, they were able to change water into blood. Once his magicians were able to do the same miracle, where did the Pharaoh go? The Pharaoh, he went into his house. What had happened, just like the Lord had said? The Pharaoh's heart became hard, just as the Lord had said. What did the Egyptians have to do to get water to drink? They had to dig around the river. Possibly, how long was this plague in effect? Possibly for 7 days. Exodus 8:1. The Lord said to Moses, go to Pharaoh and say to him, thus says the Lord, let my people go that they may serve me. But if you refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite all your territory with frogs. So the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, which shall go up and come into your house, into your bedroom, into your bed, in the houses of your servants, on your people, in your ovens, and in your kneading bowls. And the frogs shall come up on you, on your people, and on your servants. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your hand with your rod over the streams, over the rivers, and over the ponds, and cause frogs to come up on the land of Egypt. So Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. And the magicians did so with their enchantments and brought up frogs on the land of Egypt. What's the next plague going to be? Frogs. Pharaoh could prevent this plague if he did what? Let the Israelites go. So number 3, the complete the sentence was, so the river shall bring frogs abundantly, which shall go up and come into your house, into your bedroom, on your bed, into the houses of your servants, on your people, into your ovens, and in your kneading bowls. Who stretched out his hand with the rod over the streams, rivers, and ponds? Aaron. Were the magicians able to do this miracle too? Yes, but that doesn't make it not plague. Exodus 8:8. Then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, entreat the Lord that he may take away the frog from me and from my people, and I will let the people go, that they may sacrifice to the Lord. And Moses said to Pharaoh, accept the honor of saying, when I shall intercede for you, for your servants, for your people, to destroy the frogs from you and your houses, that they may remain in the river only. So he said, tomorrow. And he said, let it be according to your word, that you may know that there's no one like the Lord our God. And the frogs shall depart from you, from your houses, from your servants, and from your people. They shall remain in the river only. Who did Pharaoh call in hopes of getting rid of the frogs? Moses and Aaron. Note, he didn't go to his magicians to stop this. He went to Moses and Aaron to stop it. What is Pharaoh willing to do to get rid of the frogs, to let the people go to sacrifice? When Moses says, accept the honor of saying, when I shall intercede for you, he is allowing Pharaoh to pick the time for Moses to remove the frogs. When is Moses to remove the frogs? Tomorrow. What a cruel man, this Pharaoh. They've been plagued with frogs, and he decides tomorrow would be the better day than right now, right this minute, right this second. Once the frogs are removed, where will they be? Only in the river. This plague is a direct attack against the Egyptian god Heket, the goddess of water and renewal, and who has a head of a frog. So the scriptures continue. Exodus 8:12. Then Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, and Moses cried out to the Lord concerning the frogs which he had brought against Pharaoh. So the Lord did according to the word of Moses, and the frogs died out of the houses, out of the courtyards, and out of the fields. They gathered them together in heaps, and the land stank. But when Pharaoh saw that there was relief, he hardened his heart and did not heed them as the Lord had said. So yeah, it'd be quite a stench, all these dead animals. Who cried out to God to remove the frogs? Moses cried out to God to remove the frogs. Did the frogs die where they were, or they did just walk back to the river? They died where they were. What had Pharaoh promised he would do when the frog plague stopped? The children of Israel could be released to do a sacrifice. We now have two plagues. What are they? First plague is turning the river into Nile, and the second plague is the plague of frogs. Why were there frogs after the river turned into blood? Once the river turned into blood, the fish died, but those animals that could get out of the water and onto land did. Frogs are amphibious, or are able to live in both land and water. Why did God have them die where they were instead of having them all walk back to the river? When they died, they were gathered in heaps and stank, which contributed to the next two plagues. Yeah. So scriptures continue. Exodus 8:16. So the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your rod and strike the dust of the land, so that it becomes lice throughout the land of Egypt. And they did so. For Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod and struck the dust of the earth, and it became lice on man and beast. All the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Egypt. Now the magicians so worked with their enchantments to bring forth lice that they could not, so there was lice on man and beast. Note the word translated lice here could also be gnats, fleas, flies, or ticks. Modern day lice do not torment both man and beast, so unless it's a type of lice that no longer exists, it's probably one of the other small insects. Who struck the dust with his rod? Aaron. Notice Pharaoh does not appear to have been contacted first. He broke his word, so he doesn't get a chance to stop this plague before it starts. What came out of the dust? Lice. See the note above. What is the problem with this word translated as lice? Lice doesn't seem to bother people, but other of the small insects do. What could this small insect be instead of lice? Gnats, fleas, sandflies, or ticks. Could the magicians do the same miracle? Nope, they couldn't. This plague is a direct attack on Geb, the Egyptian god of the dust of the earth. The scriptures continue. Exodus 8:19. Then the magicians say to Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. But Pharaoh's heart grew hard, and he did not heed them, just as the Lord had said. And the Lord said to Moses, rise early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh as he comes out to the water. Then say to him, thus says the Lord, let my people go that they may serve me. Or else, if you will not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies on you and on your servants and on your people and into your houses. The houses of the Egyptians shall be full of swarms of flies, and also the ground in which they stand. And in that day I will set apart the land of Goshen, in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there, in order that you may know that I am the Lord in the midst of the land. I will make a difference between my people and your people. Tomorrow this sign shall be. What did the Egyptian magician say to Pharaoh? This is the finger of God. What time of day did Moses confront Pharaoh? Right early in the morning. What will be the next plague if Pharaoh does not let the people go? Flies. When will it happen? I don't know. The next plague will happen the next day. Okay. What land will the flies not be in? The land of Goshen. So the first plague is turning the river into Nile. Second plague is frogs. third is lice, and the fourth is flies. Note, there doesn't seem to be a stop of the third plague, lice, when the fourth plague, flies, starts. We always think of them happening separately, but they could have happened together. Now remember, again, there's the heaps of frogs. So frogs and lice would come from the heaps of frogs. The scriptures continue. Exodus 8:24. And the Lord did so. Thick swarms of flies came into the house of the Pharaoh, into his servants' houses, and into all the land of Egypt. The land was corrupted because of the swarms of flies. Then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, Go sacrifice to your God in the land. And Moses said, It's not right to do so, for we will be sacrificing the abomination of the Egyptians to the Lord our God. And we sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians before their eyes, then will they not stone us? We will go 3 days' journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God as he commands us. The Lord was corrupted because of the swarms of flies. Okay, who called Moses and Aaron? Pharaoh did. What precisely did Pharaoh say to Moses and Aaron? Moses and Aaron, go sacrifice to your God in the land of Goshen, basically is what he's saying. When Pharaoh says, go sacrifice to your God in the land, Pharaoh means for the Israelites not to leave, but sacrifice in the land of Goshen. Did God want the Israelites to sacrifice to him in the land of Goshen? Nope, absolutely not. 5, for we will be sacrificing an abomination of the Egyptians to the Lord our God. What Moses means here is that the Israelite way of sacrifice and what they sacrifice, which is a lamb, would be abominable to the Egyptians. This fourth plague is against the Egyptian god Khepri, who is the head of a fly. So the scriptures continue. So Pharaoh said, I will let you go, that you may sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness. Only you shall not go very far away. Intercede for me. Then Moses said, Indeed, I'm going out from you, and I will entreat the Lord. The swarms of flies may depart tomorrow from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people. But let Pharaoh not deal deceitfully any more, in not letting the people go to sacrifice to the Lord. So Moses went out from Pharaoh and entreated the Lord. And the Lord did according to the word of Moses. He removed the swarms of flies from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people, and not one remained. But Pharaoh hardened his heart at this time also, neither would he let the people go. Will the Pharaoh let the Israelites go 3 days' journey away? Nope. What does Pharaoh want Moses to do for him? Intercede with God. When will Moses have the flies depart from Egypt? The next day. What warning did Moses give to Pharaoh? Do not be deceitful with us anymore. Were the swarms of flies removed? Indeed. Did the Pharaoh let the Israelites go? Nope. How many descriptions have been given regarding where the Israelites want to go and what they will be doing? Let's put up all the descriptions here. Let's see. Exodus 3:18. How many days' journey? 3 days long. What would they be doing? Sacrificing to the Lord. Exodus 5:1. What will they be doing in the wilderness there? They'll have a feast to God. Number C, Exodus 5:3. What happens if the Israelites do not sacrifice? God will cause a pestilence and they'll be killed with a sword. And number D, Exodus 7:16. What will the Israelites do in the wilderness? He will serve God in the wilderness. So now we come to the crossword in the end of this chapter. Okay, so number 3, Moses was 80 years of age when he spoke to the Pharaoh. 5, the third plague was a serpent. Third plague was a serpent. That's incorrect. 5. Oh, lice. Sorry. Third plague was lice. When he cast it before Pharaoh, Aaron's rod became a serpent. That's 7. Sorry about that. 7. Number 1, the magicians also cast their rods down. They became servants. Number 2, the fourth plague was flies. The first plague was turning the Nile into blood. The second plague was frogs. So that's the end of this chapter, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you now.